Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. It's the 7th episode of HeleCloud Talks Cloud. I have been abandoned by Walter, and now I have to put up with Will underneath me. This is where I've left him, so just to prove a point. And we have Vassil and Nick, who are both my guests. It's a really funny combination that we have here because everyone on this live stream I've met on a HashiConf. Actually, Vassil and Nick I met on a Hashi Days conference. This is what it was called. Yeah, Vassil was wearing his T-shirt just to bring up the nostalgia. And Will I met 2 years ago on HashiConf in Amsterdam. So everyone I've first seen in Amsterdam. Vassil, Nick, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, it was nice before COVID times when we were able to visit those conferences. It was really great. Hopefully the things will normalize.
So we can go back and meet again in person. So
yeah, HashiConf was the best coffee, best catering, also good topics, but you have to compare
the rest.
The rest as well, and lots of amazing people.
Indeed.
I think that when I met you, Lena, it was the first time. So I'd only been at HeleCloud for 2 weeks. I'd booked it all before I was actually an employee, and I turned up one day and I said, Is anyone from HeleCloud able to meet up with me? And Lena went, yeah. And I was surprised because basically we'd never talked before. And she went, I'll meet you here. I'm in Amsterdam with my family as well. And I said, really? Do you not want to spend time with your family? And she said, yes, I love them very much. But I'm so committed to HeleCloud that, I'll show you around the best coffee shop. And we went to, I'm going to say, have a reasonable coffee. And she said it was absolutely amazing.
We walked for 10 minutes and then I was like, yeah, so how do you like it? And he said, it's coffee. And I hated him that minute. I just hated him. But then we got introduced to some colleagues from All In Data who were still All In Data at the time. And they looked at Will and said, did you also arrive today? You look like you arrived today. And he had arrived like 2 days ago, but he just looked like, I'm not allowed to say this, you know what I mean. Anyway. Fun times before the apocalypse. Our first topic for today is an article that I actually dislike. It's called "Make Database Normalization Part of Cloud Migration." I'm going to post this as a comment so that our viewers can have a look. But the idea is that you should definitely normalize your databases before the migration, as opposed to doing a lift and shift and then having to fix them again. Is my network bad?
No.
I could disappear for this. Okay, good. And it makes this really strong claim that it doesn't actually prove throughout the article. It just says, I'm going to tell you why this is super important. Here's why, another paragraph of why you need to do it. And then here's the plan on how you need to address this by getting stakeholders involved and getting budget approved and all that.
Maybe I can bring you to a better mood with some more moderate statement in that regard. So first we have to clear this up. We are not talking about normalizing the data schemas like the traditional SQL normalizing of entities. Rather than we are talking about focusing and normalizing the usage of databases in terms of which database is best for our workloads. So maybe we can express this example with let's say we have a company which wants to go to cloud. They have a ERP system and maybe they're using some internal application for their sales representatives to sell their products. And they have decided we are moving to the cloud, and at some point we'll even make our online shop work. So the traditional thing is you start straightforward, right? So you take your SQL database, you move it to the cloud, you set up replication between the two databases, then you lift and shift your application to the cloud. At some point you cut the wire and you have your public ERP and sales application running in the cloud. So far, so good. It's not a small achievement, because what you have achieved is to have a flexibility to grow your systems in a very agile way. So it's not like running application on-prem where you have to provision servers, you have to provision operating system and everything else. It's like in public clouds, it's a matter of minutes of provisioning your applications. But okay, now you are in the cloud and you want to scale. So you want to expose your sales application to the whole world, probably achieve 1000% more sales. And what happens is that enterprises think that they can operate with their existing application. And for sure, we have to understand what will be our workloads, how much our system will be stressed. And everybody knows that when you are exposed to public, it might be that for some time your applications might be idle, but in certain moments like Black Friday or something else, it might be that million people are clicking on your site. So what do? First of all, you have to design your application, and especially in that case, the recommendation is to go serverless, to leave the big cloud systems to handle your load, so that you pay only for the amount of CPU or memory usage that is in place. Therefore, you can scale very much up and down. But if you don't consider the database, because everything is driven by the application, but at the end, the database is our storage, right? If you don't consider this and you are playing with your old school SQL database that you have lift and shifted, then it will become a huge bottleneck, because suddenly there will be millions of instances of cloud functions that are running against your database, and it won't be able to handle it.
Yeah.
So
but I think the question is, when do you do that transition? I think what the article is pointing is that you should do it during the lift and shift. So it's not really a lift and shift. You actually do a migration and modernization at the same time. But I think personally, from my experience, that when you talk to enterprises, moving to the cloud is already quite a challenge. And there's still a lot of enterprises that are careful. And I think from what I've seen in my past, that it's an achievement if you get a big enterprise to even do a lift and shift, which is like the lightweight version of the migration from a cloud provider perspective. So I think getting an enterprise customer to do lift and shift and also go serverless at the same time, it's probably easier said than done. I mean, that's what's addressed in the article as well, that you need to get the stakeholders to support you with that. But I personally think that is a pretty difficult task.
I think
it's very romantic.
It becomes as much about people through the article. They start talking about technology, but it's not really a technology decision. It's a people decision about stakeholders and HR and getting people on side to give that confidence that it's going to work.
I think the major focus in the article, if you look at from 10,000 feet, was plan ahead and have the right resources, right?
Yeah, but no one ever goes all in my experience, because I've seen a lot of customers, they get migrated by our professional services, and it's already so much work that they don't want to think about changing their current database system to an RDS. And also, I've seen a lot of things that you have to rewrite your application to be able to do in the cloud, like not handling DNS well, and having to connect to an IP instead of a host name for the database. And it's something that you have to people have to develop trust for the cloud and for the people managing the infrastructure to be able to make a decision on.
And it's hard for people to make decisions. I mean, do you have anything that Vassil, how do you help people make those kinds of big decisions?
Yeah, I don't have a magic wand, unfortunately, that makes them make the right decision. But
or
I mean,
that's
exactly. Yes, exactly. But that's a problem. And as you say, Lena, it's difficult to do just a simple migration in some situations, or probably in most situations. And never mind if you actually want to push them to DynamoDB instead of whatever legacy system that they're using. I mean, that's a lot of work and a lot of commitment. And if there's no trust in the cloud in general, then getting them to trust that you can really just refactor everything, it's difficult. I think what you probably should do is, if you encounter a group of people who's very cautious about it, is probably just try to get them to do greenfield projects in the cloud, basically prove that works, and then slowly start moving over legacy systems, whether it's a lift and shift or whether you do migration and optimization at the same time. But there needs to be the necessary trust first there. So.
Sorry, Nick, I will not agree. Because I have one success story, exactly one, where we were talking about the technical reasons for a year and a half, and everyone was like, yeah, this is super cool. Yeah, we're totally going to do it, not now, but we're totally going to migrate our MariaDB on EC2 to RDS. What actually won the argument was presenting financials. We were like, this is how much you're paying now. This is how much you're going to pay for RDS. And the winning point was that they were actually paying for MariaDB support something like £33,000 a year. And it was literally, these £33,000 per year are not going to be there when you move to RDS. And they were like, okay, we're doing it next month. It was no technical arguments.
You stole my point exactly. So I would say greenfield is really good to make confident the development team who is creating and supporting the applications. But if you want to convince the CTO or the CAO, probably talking data, talking figures is the best thing. I mean, if you put on the table, we are going to execute this project in half a year, and we will save you, let's say, 50% of your existing support and other fees. Maybe they will be very easily convinced.
Yeah, cost savings approach wins. All right, let's move on to our next topic, which is about, because we're on a HashiCorp subject, Terraform code repositories, and namely Terraform Monorepo versus multirepo, the great debate. So who wants to go first? What kind of repo do you use, Vassil and Nick?
Should we do a vote who uses Monorepo versus who prefers multirepo? I think I'm personally in the multirepo. Multirepo. So, even though I do see the benefits of having a monorepo, I mean, there's the what I've observed with multirepos is you do get version drift, be it from the repos themselves or from Terraform. So it brings along some complications. But for me, especially if you're in a large organization, and you have a lot of different teams, having them all operate on the same repository brings just so much more complication in terms of access rights and coordination. I mean, you need to make sure that everything is running centrally, no one is executing Terraform locally on their machine. You have proper state locking. So, I mean, the article, I think it's a blog post by HashiCorp. It also says there's no right or wrong. So yeah, but I personally definitely prefer the multi-repo approach.
Yeah.
Do you think that one of the challenges with multi-repo is how many is reasonable? Because this is, I mean, something I don't know if you want to talk about, Nick, of how many different modules could you have nested into each other before it becomes a new challenge just to manage them together? What do you think?
Well, I have seen repositories with, let's say, hundreds of references, but here we should mention something from the article is that actually Terraform does a very good job with handling this. I mean, at the end, it brings all the remote repositories into your local so-called monorepo. So I mean, at the end, it gives much more flexibility to have multi repositories and to have a certain consolidation point. And okay, it also gives a capability to play around with different module versions. Maybe one cloud will use the module with one version, the other one will experiment with the newest one, and as soon as you're ready, you can then update the productive cloud. So it brings a lot of benefits of using multi-repo. And okay, I can understand many people when they start with Terraform, they're very confused with using different repos. They just start putting their scripts, Terraform scripts in one repository. But at some point, when you have references to 5 different types of database installations, virtual networks, Kubernetes clusters, deployments, and so on, it becomes really painful to work with one.
I mean, it obviously depends on what type of setups you have. If you have the same setup that you have just replicated 100 times, then yeah, maybe go with a monorepo and just branches or whatever you want to do. But if you, as Nick said, if you have just some basics that are common and then very a lot of variations in different environments, that I prefer the multi-repo approach.
So would you guys kind of put together a registry for people to be pulling out their own inner sourced tools to put them together and reuse them? Or does that then mean that you've got teams that are dependent on each other that don't have the same goals, if that makes sense? So if I write an S3 module and Nick in another team wants to use it, but my S3 module doesn't work how Nick wants it to, we can have conflicting S3 modules. And because we're not in our mono repo, my things affect you without us having any relationship at all, really, apart from maybe in the same company.
Actually, this is valid for every source code that you do. I mean, if we are talking about infrastructure as code or applications as code, it's the same thing. So the benefit of isolating modules is that you can have different people from different teams working on one and the same module, but at the same time, you have versioning, right? That's why we say GitOps. And this helps basically. If you need one functionality, you can introduce a feature in the module, but you should think also that you will influence at some point the other teams. So again, it's a matter of development culture, how you introduce your changes.
In our case, we had Monorepo as a start, and we came to need a multi-repo. And what happened was, initially when we started, we had like one repository where we had different folders for the different environments, just how it's explained in the article. And I was building the HashiCorp support team in Bulgaria at the time, so we had a person from HashiCorp visiting, and he was like, yeah, that's not how you do it. You need to use workspaces and have like one and the same code for staging and production, and UAT staging and production should be just one code, and you work with workspaces across the different environments. But that happened to be overkill as well, especially if you're using open source Terraform where there wasn't any workspaces at the time. And later on, when we had more and more customers with more and more repositories, we were hitting the snowflake problem, where every infrastructure was built at a different point in time where different best practices were the standard. So every customer was completely different, and we had to transition into a state where we standardize everything. So, and this only happens with the multi-repo approach. So I think people tend to start with Monorepo because it's easier. You have less complexity, and you need less complexity to begin with, and then you sort of transition to the necessary multi-repo.
Actually, you have mentioned workspaces. I have seen even crazier approaches. There is this tool called TerraGrunt, which basically runs as a pre-compiler for your Terraform executions. So you can do many crazy things of combining different states and then executing over this the actual cloud infrastructure scripts. So yeah, I mean you can play really deep with infrastructure nowadays.
I was actually at a PagerDuty online event a few days ago, and people were talking about using GitOps, and in the comments section, some people were asking the presenter, are you using one repo for staging and production, or are you using two repos? And the guy was like, one repo, because they have to be the same code. And again, another point to the argument, it's whatever you need. There's no right or wrong way.
Well, people who are accustomed to versioning control systems, they prefer to have, of course, it really depends, but if you have testing, staging, and production, you would need to have a certain tools to compare how, for example, production deviates from your sandbox. So that's why probably people prefer to have them into one repo and to just compare different branches, and at some point just to do a rebase or merge against the productive cloud. So I can understand that too.
It's very different if you're running your own infrastructure and if you're managing the infrastructure of multiple environments. This is where it gets complicated. I've read so many articles and visited like DevOps events and read books about it. And there's no book on how to do services for multiple infrastructures. All of the best practices are there for product companies that are managing their own code.
I was going to say, if we think about it as being really a cultural thing, I mean, I don't know, Vassil, what's your opinion on how you shift maybe an engineering culture from sysadmins to infrastructure as code? What does that kind of mean, do you think?
Yeah, the cultural shift is definitely. I mean, okay. I think from our personal experience, we've seen a lot of like the two sides of things. We have people who are like still stuck in their sysadmin mindset, and you have people who are very eager to progress and move on to modern approaches and to exciting new technologies. And bridging that together, I think you need good leadership that it is able to really also push for the quote-unquote right direction. And make sure that the cultural shift goes into the direction that you really want to have as a enterprise or as a company. If that makes sense.
I think in a purely personal level, what I have seen is that when you try to shift your operations to real DevOps, basically you don't tell to sysadmins now you're a DevOps and you'll behave like that. Rather than we can, there are people from the development team who are combining with the people from SysOps team, and as soon as they have a common goal and defined processes, I think this is basically the cultural shift we are talking about.
It's all about people again. We've gone full circle. Same 2 different questions, same answers, but all about people.
People who drink good coffee and will. So our last topic is about a bold statement that our CTO Netherlands made on LinkedIn a few days ago. Bold statement time. If your tech stack contains Jenkins on AWS, I'm willing to bet you have serious issues. Fight me. And no one did because they're all his friends.
But yet he's not here today, so what happened there?
Fight him. Good point.
So any fans of Jenkins here?
I mean, I would say in defense of Jenkins, I'll often say you've got to find, as we've suggested with the first 2 things, you've got to find the value, and that's got to be data driven. So if you're already really good at running Jenkins, would you retrain everyone to run a different system if it's not going to add fiscal value, speed value?
I even say yes at this point, because I personally don't see a very bright future for Jenkins, and probably a lot of people will disagree here with me. But when you look at all the other tools that are out there these days, and they're so benefited for the modern challenges. And I don't think people have a company that say, okay, we're doing this type of work and this is not going to change for the next 20 years. I mean, if that's their plan, they probably have a different problem. But you should definitely look at training people, even if that means, okay, a lot of investment at a point. I just think that you can save so much time and so much money in the long run. And I definitely think that it's a decision worth making and a move worth making, even if you don't.
Because we're engineers, we like to work
you have to
with
keep reinventing
the proper tools and and reinvent them. But it will be difficult to get buy-in from management because you have to change all of the infrastructure underneath and retrain people, as you said. Not to mention rewrite all of your pipelines and an entirely new tool. Like I was talking to one of our people internally about switching from code pipeline to Gitlab pipelines, and he was like, I'm not totally against it, but do you realize how much work this is going to be, rewriting everything? And I'm like, okay, because you're making version 2 of the landing zone at the moment. It's the best time. You're either going to do the work now or in 2 years. So better do it now than do more work in 2 years.
So one example, just one vote for Jenkins, a small vote, right? So we have this experience. We were working for one enterprise of migrating their workloads, and it was really funny. We were in a meeting, and we have just migrated to Jenkins to AWS, and we have configured it there. Nice plugins that, for example, you can build on spot instances. And it was quite funny because those guys were talking about another build system pipeline that they were trying to promote into the enterprise. And when we showed at the end the figures, I mean, they were talking about thousands of euro for just building inside the enterprise with their license system. And we have showed Jenkins running on AWS with build jobs on spot instances, and the prices were
cents, basically. But again, it's something that you can achieve with other systems and still probably be cheaper and better and more future-proof. So. Anyway.
All down to money again. We've almost run out of time, and it has been a super nice conversation. Thanks, Vassil and Nick, for being with us, and thank you, Will, for waking up to co-host together with me.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
I want to give Vassil and Nick 2 minutes to tell you about what they're doing other than podcasts together with us.
Well, that was our first podcast, so not really big in the podcast business. So again, thank you for inviting us and having us over. Nick and I have started the company actually last year, just before the pandemic, because we decided that's a good time to start something new. And we are basically focusing on infrastructure and automation in general. But we also do development tasks in all kinds of different areas, mainly focusing on mobility, so mobile apps, even though, okay, mobile apps sounds a bit generic, but more in the enterprise area, because that's where both of us come from. We used to work at a startup that was acquired by a enterprise a couple of years ago, and we just decided last year that it's time for us to do something on our own. So we're trying to do that now.
Yeah, we are trying basically to unite the tasks of running and moving your applications in the cloud. So we are helping enterprises, but we are doing the same with startups. So to say, we have also greenfield projects and we have migration projects, and we are trying to help enterprises not only to just move to the cloud, but to also architect their systems, to architect their pipelines, to digitize their backend processes with mobile. So it's a broad portfolio. We hope to be helpful for our customers.
Yeah, and by the way, you were working for Honeywell before that when we first met, and I had just left Honeywell, and now the office in Bulgaria that I left has been closed due to the pandemic because it was in the aviation space. So I think you might have done well for yourselves.
You never know.
Who knows?
Yeah, I wish you all the best in your business. Will, any final words before we go?
Not from me. Jenkins still bad on AWS.
Those are final words. Yes,
Yeah.
that's good.
We can
Okay,
agree.
thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.